go. Ah, that works. Brilliant. Hello. Thank you very much to Endurancelife for having me here today. This time last year, I was planning to row around Britain. And in June and July, myself and 3 other women were the first women to row 2,500 miles round the British Isles, completely non-stop and unsupported, in a teeny-weeny little boat, which I'll show you in a minute. And I'm going to tell you about my experience of having done that, but I also really, really hope that you get from the end of when I've been speaking is that you do not have to be some big macho guy to do this, or macho girl even. What I very much believe in, I've been in the adventure industry for the last 16 years, and what I've seen is that you just need to really want to do something, and then you will do it. And essentially for me, this whole idea started 2 years ago. I was drinking like a fish, smoking like a chimney, completely unfit, and I'd realised I'd gotten into a bit of a rut. And I'm very lucky, I have a very exciting job that I go and travel around the world. And so I thought, well, I'm still doing okay. I'm going and doing fun things. I'm helping adventurers go and do their adventures. But what I really realised is I really needed to step outside my comfort zone and do something harder than I'd done in the past. And so I did what I think any sensible person would do, and I went to the pub, because that's where all your best ideas come. But I did it a little bit differently. I set up something called Bristol Explorers 19 months ago, and invited all the adventurous people that I could find and knew and friends of friends to come down on the same night to share stories, talk lots of rubbish, and hopefully come out with some ideas. And that is how I came up with the idea to row around Britain. Because I hadn't rowed for 12 years. I'd hardly been at sea well, I'd done a bit when I was a kid, but I wasn't really a seafarer. But I had done lots and lots of expeditions, and I'd led a lot of expeditions, and I knew that all it takes is the will, and you can learn everything else. So I got loads of us down the pub, and after 3 months, well, 3 sessions of going to the pub, I came up with the idea. I talked to lots of ocean rowers, which I'd never met ocean rowers before. They're a strange breed, but bless them, they're a great breed. And heard that no one had really rowed around Britain. One crew of 4 men had rowed around Britain 6 years ago and successfully gotten around, but lots of other crews had tried. And it was so hard that all the rest of them had failed. And to me, that was like a red rag to a bull. It was like, brilliant, something really pioneering, really exciting. I'm going to have to do it. So I didn't know really where to start. But I talked to some people, and as John was talking before, what you need to do first is find help. Because if you don't know what on earth you're doing, you have to find help. So I talked to lots of people who knew about it. And they told me, well, the first thing you need to do is get a boat, which did make sense. And I looked at lots of terrible boats, and then I finally found Go Commando, which had been across the Atlantic a few times, and is a beautiful boat. And this is the first day that we picked it up. And there's the boat builder in the back. He'd built this boat to go across the Atlantic, and he took it across the Atlantic the first time. It's 24 foot in length. You can fall into a hole, which you should be really good at when you're on a boat, because you actually learn how not to do that, but I just did. Basically, that's what we lived on for 52 days. You sleep in one end, and in the other end, you sleep in the other end as well. There was 4 of us on the boat at the end. You're sleeping in what is essentially a coffin. And that is just enough room for 2 people to be rowing at one time. And all our food was stuffed into the hold, into those, you can see the circles there. That's everything we had on the boat that we needed to do the whole row was on the boat. That was the only way we were going to get a completely unassisted, well, in the end, a Guinness World Record. And I'm going to be more careful when I go this way. So I got the boat, and then I realised, well, what else do I need? Okay, the most important part, I need some other women, because I can't do this on my own. The best part of any expedition is your team. So I didn't really know where to start. So I put out an advert in the newspaper, in magazines, here and there, and had quite a lot of people apply. But once I told them that they were going to have to raise thousands of pounds, they weren't going to get paid, they weren't going to become famous, they were going to potentially die, and it was going to be miserable, they all fell away. But I did finally end up with 3 women who were willing to do it. And these were actually the only 3 women I could find. But thankfully, it all worked. And that's Laura, myself, Angela, and Bev. And so I had a boat, and we had a crew. So I knew that it was going to happen. I knew everything else would fall in after that. So we started getting our supplies ready. That's all the food that we took. It was horrible ration packs and all that vile kind of stuff. Not particularly healthy, but what you need to do to, what you have to have, because you have to stuff it into a boat. So there's no other way of eating anything fresh. And so we'd wrap it up like that, stick it into the hold. That was we were eating about 4,000 calories a day, and that was just a snack pack. So chocolate, Cliff Bars, and there's a Cliff Bar store here today. I've eaten Cliff Bars are great, but when you've eaten hundreds of them, you never ever want to see another one in your life. So Cliff Bars are great, but personally, I'm never going to touch another one in my life. Lots of tuna, stuff like that. The pate, I won't, you can't see the label. Don't have that pate, it's terrible. Anyway, and we had some, on the last day before we left, we were given some packages. It does look like we're smuggling drugs. This is actually a fruit cake made by Laura's mum. And she gave us 3, they're about this big. And 2 of them died and completely got sodden with water. But that one we ate, and it was fantastic. But yeah, mums, if you're ever going to give anyone something before they go on a big expedition, give it to them a few days in advance so that they can actually package it up. Because we literally just had big slabs of fruitcake and wrapped in tin foil, which didn't really work on a 24-foot boat in the middle of the sea. We had all the kind of electronic gizmos you can imagine that you'd need at sea. We had a radio, we had a see-me, which allows you to be seen on radar, because when you're a teeny little speck, you want to look a bit bigger so that people can actually see you. We had a navigation system, Navman, which is a chart plotter to sailors, which is a bit like a sat-nav in a car. And we had a water maker, very importantly. This basically turns seawater into drinking water in the very simplest of senses. And we're pretty much ready to go. Did a bit of filming with Countryfile, as you do, and that was it. We were ready to leave. The whole time to prepare was probably only about 4 months, which is not at all what I recommend when you're going on a major expedition. But once the idea had been planted, we were, it was either that summer or we were going to have to wait till the next one. So we got going, and suddenly we were at Tower Bridge, and Branson was there. And it suddenly became very real. And I don't know if you've planned similar sorts of things, whether it be small or large, but you can be planning it for months and thinking about every little detail, and suddenly you're actually there, and you think, oh, crikey, I'm really going to have to go now. I'm really going to have to do this. And having Branson there was obviously amazing, and having Virgin on board was fantastic. Also, by that point, we had competition. We had 4 boys versus 4 girls in a kind of... which became then the Virgin Trophy, and that phallic thing in the middle is the Virgin Trophy. I don't know who designed that, but... and there we were. They had a very swanky boat, and we were just in a normal ocean rowing boat. So we felt a little bit out of our depth before we'd even started. It felt a bit like David and Goliath that day. And of course, we were at Tower Bridge. Of course, London didn't give us the weather we wanted. It was all a bit murky and a bit scary, really. And off we went. And there was us as we set off. And that was us. 4 of us, that tiny boat, everything on board that we needed. And that was our life for the next 52 days. Which seems a bit, I don't know, maybe boring, but what we went through was extraordinary. And the things that we saw around Britain and how amazing Britain actually is, even though we kind of think, oh, it's only our country, and it's so easy to overlook what's right in front of you. but I have a completely different appreciation of Britain having done this. So there we were. We had everything we needed. We were cooking on board. We were map breeding. It was all great. The sun was out. The first couple of weeks, fantastic. We were beating the boys, which was great for morale. And it was all happy days. And also, the best thing about being on a tiny boat like that is that you have no engine, you have no sail. You are moving at maybe 1.5, 2 knots, 2.5 knots most of the time. So you're part of nature, and you have a connection with the sea and with nature that you do not get any other way than putting yourself. And I'm sure you're all adventure racers and do stuff outside. You all love outdoors as much as I do. You can go running in the city and it's fun, but if you go running and immerse yourself in the outdoors and there's no boundaries, there's no motor, there's no walls, you have an extraordinary connection with what you're in. And the best thing, my absolute thing that kept me going through all of this was the wildlife. We'd have seagulls coming down and visiting us, spinning around the boat, getting incredibly close. And I know seagulls, they're just seagulls. But actually, when they're that close and when they're obviously interacting with you, it's extraordinary. Catching this on film, however, is a bit difficult. We had zillions and zillions of seals following us, playing with us, playing around the boat. But this is always, as soon as you got the camera lifted up, they'd just disappear. That's the best picture we've got of a seal. And we must have seen about 200 of the damn things. But we did, they was right next to the boat. But when the only slightly annoying thing about rowing is that when you're rowing, both hands are on oars, and you want to pick up your camera or your film camera, but you can't because the other person's rowing and you're both rowing. And if you stop rowing, it's like, oh, sorry, wait a minute. Ooh, 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 ooh. And you've only got moments to get your picture. So, not the best. But some of it worked. So hard to get the camera. But occasionally it paid off. And we'd come round to Milford Haven by this point, and we had hundreds, literally, of dolphins around us that day. They followed us all day, and it was like they were escorting us, and it was just unique and special. And unless you put yourself out in places like that, you don't experience this sort of thing. But it was extraordinary this day, because we called it Dolphin Day in the end, because we had dolphins around the boat for 24 hours. And also, by being out there at sea, you start to see the sea as not just this blue mass of water. And just in this picture, you can kind of see, obviously it's because of the cloud cover, but you can see the difference just in the colour and the textures of the sea. We must have spotted and we came up with names for like 50 different types of sea type. Everything from completely flat calm, looking like oil, to massive, horrible waves, but also leopard skin type and craziness. The sea is, I'm sure if there's any sailors here, they'll know that the sea has many, many characters, and that just shows one of them. So, at the first couple of weeks, all happy days, all smiling, it's all going great, and we're beating the boys, and fantastic. And in fact, around this point at Land's End, the boys quit. They got stuck at Land's End. Land's End is really hard to get around. It's not, the British seas are actually some of the hardest seas to navigate in the world. You've got incredibly harsh, conflicting currents. You've got massively different tidal ranges. And you've just got an awful lot going on, and you're constantly working to not allow it to get the better of you. But every now and then you get some surprises, and this is just one day when we were chilling out and having a nice time on anchor again, because occasionally you have to anchor if the tide is beating you. She still read that book after that. It actually kind of survived. She, page by page, dried it out, because obviously you can imagine we don't have much resources on our boat. So we were now, carefully coming around that corner, We were now somewhere near Cornwall. We'd come around Land's End. We were coming up this whole section from Cornwall, Devon, and up through the Irish Sea. And things started to change because the weather, okay, we didn't have the buoys. And actually, you'd think that's great. You know, the buoys have fallen out. We've already won. We just have to get round. But they were our compatriots in this. They were our kind of, we loved kind of being, they were in it with us. And when they dropped out, it was a real morale downer. So that, plus the fact that the weather started to really kick us, things started to get a bit harder. And this is like on any expedition or any adventure race or anything that you do that's challenging, is when you have to start digging into yourself and thinking, okay, we have to just keep going. And the skies just started getting darker, and we just started getting worse and worse weather. And we had gale force winds as we were coming up the Irish coast. So we were getting kind of massive swells and stuff. And we had to keep anchoring, which is very, very demoralising, because we couldn't make any progress, because we could only pull so hard. We didn't have a motor, we didn't have a sail, we didn't have any other kind of backup. So we had to, any progress was just in our physical strength. And the sea is very powerful, so unless it's going in your direction, basically you're stuffed. So we had to keep stopping. We also got swamped. This was the first time we got swamped. And if you can imagine, if you're sitting in a boat, slightly raised up above the sea, but then suddenly you're up to your chest height in water, and you're suddenly thinking, it feels like I'm sitting in a bath. But you realise that, for a moment, the first time it happened, for a moment you're thinking, are we sinking, or have we been swamped? And literally, you'd think that a wave would come over you and go away again. But in fact, it hangs around. And we were thinking, we both sat there thinking, we're sinking. And we're tied onto the boat. So we're thinking, do we unclip? What do we do? And this was pitch dark at the time. And this was the morning after, when we were still bailing out the boat. And then it happened quite a few times. And things started to become a bit more serious. But what kept keeping us going was these beautiful places that we kept going through, and the wildlife. And you just do not see this. You do not experience this unless you put yourself into these positions. And this was near Skye. Skye is the most beautiful place in the whole of the British Isles, in my opinion, having done this route anyway. It stunned us. Every single moment we had in Skye was stunning. This is a great skewer that came, landed on our boats. They were dive bombing us and walking all over our boat and craziness. And even puffins came right up to us because we didn't have a motor. We weren't making crazy, man-made noises. So they would just come up and have a look at us, and along with all the seals that we could never get a photograph of. And also we'd go through, there's crazy wind farms out there that it's like going into a forest. It's like nothing you've ever seen. And this is all in Britain, and we have such a beautiful country, and it's extraordinary to just reflect and think that we do have all of this, and yet it's so easy. I don't know, personally, it's so easy to forget what we've got on our doorstep. This was coming around Cape Wrath, which is at the top northwest tip of Scotland. This is horrible, horrible place to go round. And we'd just come round and we were like super pleased, because that was myself and Bev on the oars at the time, and we'd made it, and we were wondering, really, are we going to? So we were now up in the northwest tip. And things started to keep getting worse. We'd come up against some really bad weather now, but now we were 35 days in and our bodies were disintegrating. This is what our hands looked like halfway through. And they were all of our hands were stuck by then in a kind of claw, what we called claw hand. Because you couldn't straighten your hands and you couldn't make a fist, because your hands were so swollen and so, claw-shaped. They were so stuck in the rowing position that you couldn't actually do anything with them. And they're covered in blisters as well, but that, frankly, is nothing compared to not being able to move your fingers. So the pain and the agony, I remember getting on with Bev one time, probably about 40 days in, and it took her an hour to be able to curl her index finger and her first finger round the oar to pull the oar. And I mean, so the physical strain was really starting to kick in. We'd also been completely sleep deprived by now because we were rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off for the entire time, and that's what we did for the whole row. So we were all slightly going mad. And we had, unfortunately, one of the girls on the boat really did go mad. She saw skeletons on the boat. She saw her dead uncle on the boat. And this is what happens with sleep deprivation. It's a form of torture. And all the signs that you get from sleep deprivation are psychosis. It's the same exact signs that you get. So things were getting quite difficult. We were bruised up and battered up. And, and I don't know if you know anything about ocean rowing, but a lot of the hardest thing about ocean rowing for a lot of people physically is their bums, because they get covered in spots and then they become boils, and then you're sitting on boils on your bum every single day for 12 hours a day, and you're rowing, so you're putting pressure and friction against those boils again. And most of us were fine, but one of the girls had, well, I've never seen anything like it. I haven't got a picture. I've just shown you this because you don't want to see the picture. And also, we're stinking like hell. This is my hair after near the end of the expedition. And whoever tells you that after 4, 5, 6 weeks of not washing your hair, it cleans itself, it's not true. It's really not true. It's just gross. I could have cooked fish and chips in that, frankly. It's not a good thing. So we're now coming down the east coast, and this is when the other things started scaring us. Because frankly, boats just didn't see us. If you're very, very tiny and don't, even with our see-me, we didn't really come up on radar. And you're a speck, and those things are about. That little boat was nothing. That's one of the few things we got on camera. But coming down the east coast, we had a near miss on the west coast, but coming down the east coast, we seemed to suddenly get lots of bad luck and find ourselves constantly in the path of big ships, container ships, massive ferries like this. This thing nearly ran us over. And when something like that comes, well, we spent one night off Wick, and there was a container ship. This was the ship, and it was a Russian captain. Oh, no, actually, this wasn't the ship. There's another ship just like this. There was a Russian captain, and we were screaming at the Coast Guard, this ship is coming right at us. Because you can see, if you're a sailor, you'll know, you can see green, blue, and red lights. Green, blue, and green, white, and yes, lights. And so you know when a ship is coming directly at you. And the ship couldn't see us, and we were just saying, you're coming straight at us, you're coming straight at us. Turn, turn, because we couldn't. We were absolutely like a rag doll in the sea, you know. Unless the sea was taking us in the direction we wanted to, we just couldn't do anything because the tide was completely taking us the wrong direction. So we couldn't get out their way. So we were just shouting down the radio at them, move, turn, turn. And there was this Russian captain on the other end going, I can't see you, I can't see you. That one was our closest one. We ended up having flares going up and all sorts of things, and it came about 12 feet from us, which, frankly, if it had, you know, the bow wave nearly tipped us right over. But if it had gone over us, that would have been that. I mean, there would have been no possible way to. We couldn't have gotten any. We couldn't get out of their way, and there would have been no way that any of us probably would have survived. And we had some other close misses, but that was the worst one. And this stuff really shook us all up. I mean, it was the hardest thing about the row was the fact that we were a little teeny-weeny little speck. And that was us after we survived. Woo! And that's another one. But we made it through. We kept picking ourselves up. All these things kept threatening to... destroy us, or at least destroy our will to keep going. But we just kept going, and that was the important thing. And this was us coming back into the Thames. at the end. And when we came in, it was extraordinary because we had the Navy came and the whole the fire service came and gave us a fancy kind of, they set off all their, I can't think of the word, those hose pipes, you know, so we had the whole kind of hose pipe kind of thing that came in. And you can just see, I mean, that's such an unflattering photograph, I hate it. But there is nothing that says how wonderful it is to have come through that as much as that. Because, and that is what this is all about, is if you put yourself out there, if you're willing, if you really want to do something, if you're really willing to see it through, you don't have to be a hero, you don't have to be a superhuman. You just have to keep picking yourself back up, and you have to keep going. And that is all that it takes. And there was us, and that was the most extraordinary moment, coming under that bridge and finishing and seeing all our loved ones and this crazy media hub as well, which is a bit bizarre. And we got our Virgin trophy back. Woohoo! And some nice sweatshirts, which is always good. That was worth 52 days at sea. And, oh, wait a minute. And it's now become a full-blown race, which is happening again this year, and it's happening on the 1st of June. And I shall be there to see the others off. I'm not doing it again. I'm going to show a teeny little film clip now, but it's all about normal people doing extraordinary things, and that is exactly how I feel about all adventure, and about the wonderful. If you really want to do something and you're willing to risk failure, because believe me, we so nearly failed so many times, in so many ways, but we finally got through, and it was a lot of luck as well as a lot of perseverance. But I'll show you this little film clip. It's a bit too late to apply for this now because it leaves on the 1st of June. But I'll show you anyway. It is too late to apply, probably, unless you're really mad. But really what I want to say is that I started something called Bristol Explorers, and it gave me the inspiration to do this, because I do believe that normal people can do extraordinary things, and you just have to want to do it, and you don't have to do anything as extreme as rowing around Britain or climbing Everest or whatever. But if you want to do that, brilliant, come and talk to me. But Explorers Connect is something that has grown out of Bristol Explorers, and we now have groups all over the country. But we also have a website which is connecting the adventure community, whether you want to do Land's End to John O'Groats or whether you want to climb Everest, whatever it is that you want to do, we will help you to connect with the right people to help you get there. It's entirely free to join, and you can talk to me at the back if you'd like to hear any more. But even if you don't want to join, that's fine. But please do step outside your comfort zone. Go and dare yourself to fail, because failure is not the end of the world. Failure is the step to winning, and failure is the step to having a richer life. So please do, that's me waving bye. Please do I don't know if I've inspired anyone at all tonight, probably not. But if I can do that, then frankly, any of you can do anything you want. So please go and do so. Thank you very much.